Now we're live.
We're live here this morning, and hopefully, Mitch, you sound like your levels are a lot better this time than yesterday or last show. A few people were.
Wow, we did a show yesterday? I don't remember that.
I don't remember what time it is. Oh, I do. It's 5 a.m. So,
Why the hell are we doing this so early today?
well, today, I've had a lot of Fridays off, but this morning I've got a production meeting early at 7:30. So I have to get in here, get stuff done early with you, and then get out of the door. So I'm working on two jobs at once. On that note, I suppose we should probably get going on the show so we can cover all this stuff before it's time for me to go. That rhymes. I just wrote a poem.
There you
All
go.
right.
You're so poetic.
In 5, 4, 3, 2. Hello and welcome back to another episode of DSLR FILM NOOB Podcast. We've got some new cameras. We've got some sale prices on small HD monitors. We've got all kinds of stuff to talk about this morning. But before we get started, we're waking up. We're getting up in the morning. We are moving forward with our breakfast shakes. Mitch, what have you been up to, man?
Superman! Hi, DJ. Thanks for having me on yet again in another exciting episode. Oh, wait, it's not exciting.
I didn't say exciting this morning. Maybe I should say slightly sleepy.
Well, I don't know if you can hear it, but there's thunder booming going on outside. We're having yet another thunderstorm here in St. Louis. It's been rainy crazy for the last couple of weeks.
Wow. Any hail, tornadoes, or anything like that?
No. That's one thing I've always wanted to see is a tornado, and someday I'm going to go do tornado hopping out in the Midwest. Wait, I'm in the Midwest. Maybe I could just sit here and watch.
So, true story. I've seen 8 tornadoes in person in
What?
my life. 3 hit the town in which I lived in while I was growing up, and there was a even bigger one. If you search for Grand Island, Nebraska, there was so much damage to Grand Island, Nebraska that they actually built a hill out of the leftover scrap from the tornado coming through town. And I found out I had a Dodge. I don't know what kind of car it was. It was a Dodge Dynasty, I think, but I don't know what year it was. But I found out for the first time that car had a maximum speed limit before the engine shut off. We're on the interstate, we're driving, and all of a sudden, a tornado is out in the left field, just coming towards the interstate. And we look at each other and like, what do we do? And people are parking under the bridge and, doing other things. And I'm like, we just need to go. So I step on the gas. The car ramps up to about 90 miles an hour, something like that. And then the engine dies.
Oh, my God.
And we're all screaming in the car and the tornado's still coming towards us like, we're going to die. And then it drops down to 80 and the engine picks back up again and it starts going. And it keeps doing that. And we're just like... We're all at the edge of our pants, hoping that we're moving fast enough. And thankfully, we got out of there, and that was fast enough to outrun the tornado. But it turns out there's a governor on some cars built into the computer that doesn't allow you to go any faster than a certain speed before it either idles or kills the engine. And that's how I discovered that. I believe the statute of limitations is up for speeding, so I'm okay there.
The strange things that we learn on the DSLR Film Noob Podcast.
I didn't used to think tornadoes or hail or lightning and thunderstorms were a strange or scary thing until you meet people that have never seen it before, and they hunker down for that stuff. I mean, they go lay in their bathtub all night while the thunderstorm's going by, and they, are freaking out if they see one dent on their car. I've had 3 cars totaled by thunderstorms and 2 roofs replaced and windows broken out of my house. So you just got to get used to it after a while. It's like, well, bunker down for an entire evening and no lights and candlelit dinner and hanging out in the dark, enjoying each other's company. So
Yep.
I would like to say that everything is good here. Mitch, do you have anything you want to talk about before we move on to the news?
No.
All right, let's just dive right into this because that's enough reminiscing about old days of thunderstorms.
It's an exciting episode of the...
Time for the news! Time for
for the news. All right, first up, let's talk about some falling prices here. If you are interested in a 7-inch monitor for your kit, your rig, whatever you're shooting on, there's a phenomenal price on the...
DJ?
Yeah?
That expired yesterday.
Oh, it expired yesterday? Oh my gosh.
I don't know Zone. There was a timer on it that...
Oh, no. Okay.
$6.99.
Mitch just failed the show right out of the gate. So there was a phenomenal price on the Smallhd DP7 Lite 7-inch monitor, and it was priced at, as you can see here, I have it captured, and obviously I wasn't paying enough attention, $399. Now it is back up to $699, no longer on sale. So if you got in on that deal, you are awesome. Unfortunately, I was too late to put it in the show. I, for some reason, thought it expired tomorrow, so I felt like it was show note worthy. So the reason I put that in there, actually, Mitch, and this is something I wanted to ask you about, it's about that time again for new products to start hitting the market as we move towards fall and then into Christmas time. We're already hearing announcements from camera manufacturers for stuff that's coming out of Photokina. Do you think price drops like this indicate that Smallhd may be releasing another line of monitors to replace the 701 and 501 series?
Boy, I sure wish I knew the answer to that question, but my good friends over at Smallhd are not talking to me about those kind of things these days. They never did, okay? But I think those highly successful line of monitors, and maybe they're bumping them up into a newer version and tweaking them a little bit, but I don't have any inside knowledge on that. I think it's fascinating in one arena if you think about the fact that they dropped the price that low. I'm wondering how they made any money on them.
I don't know. If you ever pay attention, and for those of you listening and watching, always check out B&H's Deal Zone, because, I would say probably like 3/4 of the stuff in there is not stuff you really want, but every once in a while there's like a little diamond in the rough where you look at it and you're like, holy crap, that's a great price on a piece of kit, and if you're in the market for it, it's really good. Now, while we're talking about monitors here, Mitch, I wanted to ask you, I used to shoot on 7-inch monitors on a regular basis, but as my rigs get smaller and I start scaling down, I've been moving to 5-inch panels as opposed to the 7-inch panels, and that's because the resolution has gone up. I wear glasses so I can still see everything, and they're good enough for checking sharpness, and they're far better than the screen on the back of the A7S Mark II. Now, would you give up the size for the weight, or would you prefer a 5-inch monitor that's much smaller?
Well, typically when I'm shooting stuff, it's myself, right? I'm in my basement studio, and I have an aperture monitor. There's a plug for you. That's a 7-inch monitor, but it's far enough away that I need to. It's because of the size and how far away I have it. I need a 7-inch, but that's only because of where I'm placing it. I do prefer a smaller size. I say that as maybe I should hold up my iPhone 6 Plus because I do like the bigger size in terms of that monitor. But I understand the weight issue, especially if you're mounting it on the top of a camera and doing any kind of hand-holding for any length of time.
I can tell you with the GH4, with the flip-out screen, and we've talked about flip-out screens in the past, the monitor or the screen itself is good enough for me to simply rely on the screen on the GH4 to shoot. What I find with the A7S and the A7S Mark II is that the screen is surprisingly atrocious. You think it looks good at first, but you go back and you'll miss critical focus, probably half the time if you're relying on that screen as any indicator of what's in and what's out of focus. Now, of course, you can punch in, and that does provide a much better representation of what you're shooting, but you put a IPS display 1080p on the A7S Mark II, and it is a phenomenally different shooting environment. I don't know why Sony's put such a crappy screen on the back of their.
Aren't they known for their monitors?
Yeah, I know. That's exactly it.
Yeah.
And Panasonic. I mean, I don't want to speculate too much, but I'm guessing they outsource their panel for their camera. They don't make it in house. So, why would Sony skimp on something like that? And it's really hard to say. But if you ever shoot with a GH4, that's one of the things one of the many things it's a joy to do is to use the flip out screen and have good representation of your image. Now, I try not to shoot with monitors whenever possible. It used to be mandatory when I shot on the 5D Mark III, but now when I can get away with it, I try to carry as little as possible. Just less kit, less equipment, smaller scale. Okay, that's.
We do tend to get a little carried away with gear envy and excitement when we first get started, and then the more we do it, we tend to pare it down, don't we?
I had a fellow shooter over at my place this weekend. He was checking out the remodeling I was doing, and he walked into my office that I'm in right now, and his eyes got big. He's like, "Holy crap, you have a lot of gear." And I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "What do you decide to take with you?" And I pointed to a single bag back there that only holds about 6 lenses. And I'm like, "That's the maximum size of bag I travel with." He's like, "What? How do you decide?" I'm like, you got to go through the shot list, you got to go through the script, and you got to narrow it down, because I'm not breaking my back as I'm older carrying around a bunch of freaking equipment all over the place. In fact, just the other day I was lugging a bag for 3 hours and my shoulder started hurting, and it's like, I need to even scale back a little bit more. Maybe I can get this into like a mail messenger bag or something like that. This is old man problems, I guess. Old man problems.
Yeah. Tell me about it.
All right, let's move on to a camera release.
What?
A new camera. It's not even Photokina yet, and people are already trying to beat other companies to the punch. And this is actually a surprise to me, and probably a refreshing sight to see for Fuji fans. Fujifilm has announced the new X-T2 camera. This is the first in the line of Fuji's cameras that are capable of shooting 4K. Internally, this camera is an APS-C sensor. It has all the regular things that you would expect, including a headphone jack, which is now mandatory, I hope, for most camera manufacturers, as well as a microphone input and the ability, of course, to record 4K internally. Now, there is a great interview over at newsshooter.com that you can listen to. It's Manuel Pampuri. Am I pronouncing that last name correctly?
Oh,
I think I don't know. Anyway, go check it out. Listen to it. He's the DP that's been playing around with this camera for quite a while. According to the interview, he mentioned that there were menu issues currently dealing with. They're in a beta firmware right now. He also noticed that there's a significant rolling shutter, and the battery life on the X-2T is pretty minimal. He was talking about the batteries in that interview, and he said that 3 batteries in the grip lasted him just about as long as a single battery in the GH4, which, the GH4 can
That's not
usually...
saying much, is it?
No, the GH4 can usually get 2 to 3 hours of shooting on a single battery internally. Maybe I would lean closer to 2. He was claiming getting about 2 hours or a little less on 3 batteries in the battery grip, which, wow, that's... Yeah, that is pretty bad.
That means you've got to have the battery grip and extra batteries in there, plus another set of batteries when you're shooting. Holy crap!
The other thing you mentioned is they're Fujifilm batteries too. So I don't know if there's very many aftermarket options for that, which means you're going to be paying premium prices for batteries, probably $30 to $50 a pop. 8 batteries, you're really making an investment there.
Wow, that's stunning.
Now
that kind of puts a real dent in it for most people, doesn't it?
Oh man, well the price on this is actually pretty reasonable. We're looking at a street price of $1,600 retail, which you can pre-order. There's a link in the show notes. If you're in the market for a new Fuji camera, this is really exciting. If you're comparing this to some of the competition, and you're wanting to jump ship from, Panasonic or Sony over to the Fuji camp, it doesn't look as attractive to me personally. The other thing that they noted in the interview is that this has a 10-minute file length. So, yeah, so you're arbitrarily locked down to 10 minutes worth of shooting, which in the past we've seen at least cameras going up to the 29.99 minutes worth of recording to circumvent the EU and its hold on cameras versus video cameras. I don't know. Mitch, what do you think about the X-T2? Is this anything that excites you? I know, and I want to preface this because somebody's going to get really mad at us. I don't shoot on Fuji cameras. I know several photographers and no filmmakers, actually, that love the Fuji line of cameras. And Fuji does have an awesome set of lenses. But Mitch, you're a Canon shooter. I shoot not Fuji, but I shoot on a lot of stuff. I don't know. What do you think about this camera?
Well, it's interesting, and I think I say that a lot recently, so I'm going to try to come up with another phrase.
Intriguing.
It's intriguing. Yeah, it sounds very similar, doesn't it? I don't know. We're getting to the point, and I've said this before, that there's a glut of cameras on the market. Karen from Australia, who was writing for me, loves Fujifilm cameras. She just all over them and just jumping up and down, excited about this one. And I guess it comes down to lenses, right? If you happen to have some lenses that fit on this camera, then this is going to be pretty exciting. A couple of things to note when I was doing a little bit of research. The guy that wrote the article for The Verge, which is the one I think you quoted at the beginning of the show notes.
Yeah.
The video that he did, he was like, I love this camera. He said that the T1 had become his favorite camera and, got rid of all of his Canon and other cameras. He just loved the heck out of it. I don't know why. It's a personal preference thing, I guess. I don't know why it's that much more exciting. He didn't really talk about individual items or features that really floated his boat. He did say there were some problems with it, and he said the LCD, speaking of LCDs flipping out, the LCD doesn't flip out far enough for him, and in the picture it only seems to come to like a, 35-degree angle, or I don't know what that is.
Yeah, it looks like it comes like maybe, let's say 35-degree angle. I don't know.
If you wanted to flip it out like the T4i or the T5-6i, whatever, I use that. I still have one that flips out all the way and turns around so that if you're standing in front of the camera, then you have an external a monitor to watch what you're doing, and that doesn't look like it goes anywhere close to being able to do that. Okay, it's got 4K video in it, and I did find one article that said it's got 100 megabits per second, which is pretty decent bit rate. It does have HDMI out and live monitoring on the audio, so that's good. But
really
the other thing that I did put in the show notes, and I don't even know if you saw it, but there was an article on Petapixel with pushing the RAW in post-production. So they underexposed nature scene, one of the guys that had a beta version, and on the right-hand side you see they've pushed it in post, and it looks pretty dadgum good. And I wasn't able to see the originals, of course, but it doesn't look like there's a whole lot of noise in that shot once it's been boosted in post. So that could be pretty cool if you're a photographer. Of course, it doesn't help on video side at all. But I again, as you said, I'm a Canon shooter. I've got Canon lenses. Canon lenses aren't going to fit on there. I don't have any particular need to switch. But in Fuji, they're probably pretty excited.
I've led a few photo walks, and I do this occasionally in the Portland area. I'll set up an event and walk people around in a group, and we all take shots and we talk about how we shoot and everything. And the two Fuji shooters, and I was surprised too, two Fuji shooters, not just one in the area, both swear by their camera. They say it's the best stills camera that you can get. And when you kind of try and pin them down a little bit to figure out what part makes it the best, one of the guys, he's an older gentleman. I think he's a college professor, does sociology, something like that. But his thing is the film. They have film look settings built into the camera, and he was a film shooter for a long time, and he told me that basically what he gets out of his Fuji camera is the same exact look as he used to get out of the stock film rolls that he used to shoot on when he was younger. And because of that, he just absolutely loves the look and the crunch and all the other things. When I try to tell him, like, you probably achieve most of that in a post-production workflow through, Lightroom or any of the other photo editing options that are out there, he was like, no, this is easy. I just push the button, set it to, film look and start shooting. And the other person, she was younger, and her thing was more, it was style. She's like, look at the shape of this. It's, boxy, and it's got this like look to it that you can't find anywhere else, and it feels different. And she's like, look at that Canon camera over there. It's it doesn't have enough stuff on it. It just doesn't look good. And in person, you look at a Fuji Films camera, and they are stylish. The internal settings, I mean, I don't know. Every camera these days seems to have like a sepia tone setting if you want to like set it to that. Are those enough? Maybe. I'm looking at the lens selection for Fujifilm cameras, and it is quite robust here. We basically have most of the primes that you would want covered, and they are coming out with a few more zooms, but the zoom range that they offer for the camera lineup is pretty decent right now. So if you're a shooter on Fuji and you have a lot of lenses, as Mitch said, this is probably exciting. In comparison to other offerings, I don't know. It's nice to see an APS-C sensor camera that shoots 4K, but we just got the A6300 from Sony, which is also capable of shooting 4K on an APS-C sensor, and it's priced at $999. So, it's a hard sell for a new buyer to go into the market and just shoot straight for a Fuji camera. It's the same thing with Olympus. Like, you look at Olympus, like, I love the look of the OMD line of cameras. They're all boxy and they got, metal all over them and they look like an old rangefinder. But in reality, so many other companies are offering up so many more features in their camera lineup that it's a hard sell to be like, well, yeah, I could definitely use an Olympus body, or I could definitely use a Fuji body. And no compatibility, like at least with Sony bodies and Panasonic bodies right now, we have lens compatibility between Canon, and even there's some Nikon adapters out there that allow autofocus control, aperture control, and other electronic controls that make the lenses mostly useful on those bodies. I don't know that anything like that exists for the Fujifilm cameras, which also puts them at yet another disadvantage. Anything else to add before we move on?
Well, a couple of bits while you were going into that long oration about this particular camera. Love you, man. Love you. I just thought about it that when you mentioned the Olympus, this doesn't have any image stabilization in body in it either, right?
No, it does not.
I haven't seen that mentioned anywhere. So that must not be available, and therefore Olympus makes it an even better camera at those prices. And the other thing that I have to back up, you were talking about the style of the image that the one guy was talking about, and I saw that mentioned in a couple of places, that Fuji users really love some of the selections of the film looks. And I have to go back and kind of remind you that you often talk about how you love the Canon line because you can shoot it and not fool with it a whole lot in post. And so you often say that's a good thing.
That's for video. For stills, I don't have any preference either way, because no matter what, I take all of my photos into Lightroom and mess with them. I have profiles set up. I set them up for the cameras when I get them. I have lens correction profiles. For video, I like the look of a Canon camera better than anything else. And maybe Fuji is going to succeed there too. Maybe their video look. The thing I found frustrating was the DP that they were interviewing. It's like, how did you shoot on this? He's like, oh, I shot in this ultra stylized black and white. Like, well, that's awesome. I mean, that's a cool stylistic choice, but at the same time, how does that show off the range and capabilities of this camera? Like, you could put anything in black and white and make it look pretty decent, if not really good.
Yeah.
I don't know. But yeah, my statement there was actually for video mode.
I know. But and if that's true, if you can apply those film looks in video mode with this camera, maybe it makes it appealing. That's all I was going. I'm trying to give them a little boost, okay? Maybe a little option. I don't want one. I especially don't want one because I'm so in love with full frame sensors that an APS-C doesn't appeal to me at all. So,
all right, I'm going to jump around in the show notes a little bit and move to the very last item on the list, just because this is cool and we're talking about photos and stylistic photos. Now, you can do some amazing things with smartphones, and there was some lightning shots that people were talking about with the new iPhone, but check this out. This is gorgeous. It is shot with an iPhone from 37,000 feet by a pilot flying over the Pacific. I've got a link to the Petapixel article on this, and it is absolutely gorgeous. So you look at a picture like this, Mitch, and you wish you took it. As soon as I see this, I'm like, man, if only that was in my portfolio, maybe I'd be working in photography instead of in video. But with something like this on an iPhone, what does this tell you about where cameras are going? I know we talk about smartphones replacing most of the things in your pocket, but this is more impressive than almost any other iPhone photo I've seen, unless maybe there's a collection somewhere of really amazing iPhone photos that I've just missed out on over the years. What do you think, Mitch?
I saw this photo yesterday evening, and I was blown away, just like you. It's a gorgeous photo. And yes, I wish I had that in my portfolio. And it is surprising because it is an iPhone photo.
Now,
well,
go ahead.
I hadn't really thought about this though. I'm glancing at the article on Petapixel, and I hadn't noticed this before, but it says, oh, I'm sorry, that's another, they're linking to another article. I thought they were trying to say this was captured at 240 frames per second. But
no, that was some lightning shooting, I think.
Yeah. Right. Sorry. I got really excited thinking it was actually part of a frame of a video. Sorry.
That would be really cool. Now, when we see this, and the reason I threw this in the show notes, did you see that that reveal that I believe it's called Huey or Huey smartphone was faking the images that they were posting of shots from their smartphone?
Yeah, we covered that on a website called the other day.
They're beautiful shots, and then you find out that they didn't actually come from the smartphone at all based on the metadata, right?
Well, and there's another lesson that you think most people would have learned by now, that if you're going to start posting something that's not shot with your camera, that you strip off the exit data, right?
Yeah.
You strip that stuff off. You say, hey, let's get smart about this and not post a camera that was really, really shot. Fail. Because people look at this stuff. It's like, oh, horrible.
My favorite is when you see smartphone photos posted and people forget to strip the GPS coordinate information off of their photos. And it's like, you just took a picture of the new stereo you bought and put it in your house. And oh, look, there's like $6,000 worth of cameras sitting right there. And now we have your street address. So, and we know that you work in the evenings because you tweet when you're going to work. So that's a great time to just stop by and, pick up some stuff, get a free collection going.
And there's apps that go scan social media looking for those kind of photos. And the burglars have these apps that just figure out all that stuff for them. I'll never forget a story when my wife and I, this is going back in the old days, and I know way off track, but it's short. My wife and I went to a restaurant, and this was 20 years ago, right? Back in the days when we still used answering machines at home. And the young lady at the table next to us was telling her friend, she said, well, if you want to know where I am, and if I'm not home, just call me, because every time I leave the house, I put a voice message on my answering machine telling you where I am.
What?
Yeah, she would leave a voice message on her answering machine. Hey, I'm over at the blah blah blah. So, and I'm like, just send an alert to the burglars, going, hey, I'm out of the house. Come steal my stuff.
Wow.
Anyway.
All right, let's
photo. Love that photo.
Let's move on to some more photo saving stuff. Now, we all know about Snapchat. Most of us know about Snapchat. In fact, it's slowly becoming the bastion of adults as opposed to just younger kids. It was where a lot of people fled from other social medias as they grew older in demographic. But Snapchat was originally known for the fact that it was ephemeral. You took a picture, you sent it to someone, and hopefully it disappeared. People thought of it as kind of a place to send nudie pics and other inappropriate content to fellow Snapchat users. But it looks like Snapchat is trying to move into more of a standard social media style platform, and they have released Snapchat Memories. Now, ironically, a app that's designed specifically to make things be ephemeral and disappear will now be able to save and collect all of your photos and information so that you can revisit it at a later date. This is kind of a strange turnabout for a company that's known for stuff just disappearing. And when Snapchat was formed, it was formed in the same time as things like Chat Roulette and some of these other platforms that were supposed to just go up and then disappear. What do you think about this move from ephemeral to storing your memories for as long as you need them, Mitch? Is this just a move to be Twitter or Facebook in the face of a changing environment in the social media market?
Interesting conversation coming up here, so tune in. But you know the guys that created Snapchat, they've always irritated me. I've tried to encourage my children to not like this application, purely because the guys that created the app are scumbags. They're literally total scumbags. Because you said, it started, people were using it for sending naked pics, right? That was its whole intent in the beginning. The guys that own the company admit it. I don't think they should be rewarded for that as a parent. They're now virtual billionaires. They've never sold their company, so they were offered $3 or $4 billion by Facebook 2 or 3 years ago, and they turned it down, which I thought was a stupid idea. But the company's now valued at about $15 billion, which just slays me. $15 billion they're valuing this company.
Yeah, but what's their revenue to actual evaluation difference? Because surely there isn't enough ad rev coming in from... The question is, how do they make money? Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
There isn't anything that they charge for. So this morning when I was getting ready for the show, I went out and surfed. How does Snapchat make its money? And it turns out that they have the front screen, and I don't use Snapchat. And it's kind of funny that you put this in here because last night my daughter sent me a Snapchat, and I haven't looked at Snapchat in forever. I'm like, I'm really confused by this user interface because I didn't know where anything was. But my kids are still using it now. They're 18 and 21, and so they're still using this app. But there's apparently the home screen has now sponsored videos, but they don't really say they're sponsored. But you can see stars like one of the teen stars was on the front. I forgot. But Snapchat is selling those. So if you're a product owner and want your product featured or your celebrity or whatever, it costs about $750,000 to put a video on the home screen, according to the article that I was reading this morning. And I'm like, well, almost $1 million to put your 30-second video on the front screen of Snapchat. That's where they're making their money.
Wow.
And it only lasts for a day, right? So that's a 1-day purchase, according to the article I read. I was like, holy crap. So that's why it's being valued at $15 billion, because they've got a stink load of users. They're still using it. It hasn't fallen out of grace, which is always your fear, right?
Yeah.
If the owner of one of these things, like Twitter, seems to be dying, if you ask me. But
too many bots on Twitter. It's just it's becoming slowly unusable.
Well, and people don't. I mean, I used to get a lot of my views off of Twitter. So if I'd post a new story on Twitter, a bunch of people would suddenly show up on Planet 5D. And now you post something and it's like, okay, snore. Nothing ever happens on Twitter anymore. And that's fine. That's the way social media goes. It's hot for a while and then it fades out. Unfortunately, that hasn't happened to Facebook, but that's a whole nother story. I don't know.
I've seen companies creating continuous content for Snapchat. We mentioned The Verge earlier. They actually have like 3 dedicated Snapchat channels that are continuously kicking out stuff daily. And I'm trying to figure out, like your stuff is disappearing. You're creating all this content that is only seen instantaneously and then goes away. What continuous value does that bring to the table? Because as a media consumer, you want new stuff all the time, but as a creator, you want to have an entire catalog,
right?
But you lose the catalog, and the catalog is what continues to generate revenue down the road. If you imagine for a second, if you will, a season of, I don't know, Jag or any show you want to watch. You're watching that show, and now after you're done, season 12 is the last thing available, and it goes away. Everything goes away, and there's nothing left. I mean, like, what good is that? That doesn't make you any money. You can't resell it. People can't go back and revisit stuff. And maybe these companies are saving that catalog and putting it somewhere. But if you're generating daily content like that, the other thing is, even if you're saving it, that's a glut of content that you're going to have to organize, figure out how to do something with. And if you're just dumping it onto Snapchat, how do you do that? I don't know.
Well, and like you say, your initial rant is Snapchat was created for these ephemeral things, and the stuff went away. And now, if it's not going away,
well, then what's it for? Exactly.
It's just like everything else. Other than they've got, a collected audience, and I think you're probably right. They're trying to go after Twitter and Facebook and have some additional features, but I don't know. I've honestly never liked Snapchat because of its origins. They used to swear up and down that they didn't save anything, and then found out that you could get access to those photos. They're just
my favorite.
People
are like, you can't save this, and then you see someone holding a cell phone in front of a cell phone, taking a picture of the other cell phone. Like, analog still works. I can still copy.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to another camera. Now, Mitch, We talked about this, I want to say like 7 or 8 months ago, and it was something we were both kind of excited about. It was a new type of camera that used multiple sensor sites and various tricks with mirrors and so on to generate some very interesting and unique features in a cell phone sized camera. This was called the L16, and if I remember correctly, you plunked down a bit of cash to pre order this guy. We're coming up on the date of release, if not passing it, and I just wanted to know: do you have the camera? Have you seen the camera? Do you know what's going on with this camera right here?
Well done, DJ. Well done. Now I've only plunked down $200 so far, so the company's called Light. They have, and it's so ironic, I did plunk down money and was hoping to see the camera by mid 2016, and here it is, mid 2016. So I started actually writing an article about the camera this past weekend because I'm like, I haven't heard anything recently. And so I sent my connection over at Light an email, and I said, hey, send me an update because I want to publish a story before anybody else publishes a story because it's been so long since anybody published a story. And lo and behold, as I'm trying to get information out of Light, what do? They send out an email Friday. They sent out an email Wednesday afternoon with a major update. I'm like, crap, I've been trying to do this little sneaky thing where I'd be the first person to post something, right? And lo and behold, they Snapchatted me. I'm still fascinated by this, and they published something. So that the last update, you were right, was 8 months ago. They published a video which I don't think you probably sat down and watched, but it's an hour long.
Is that the one where he talks about the technology and?
Yeah.
Yeah, I watched some of that, but it's pretty long-winded.
It is very long-winded, and some of it is really kind of over my head or under my head.
In the weeds, yeah.
But it turned out there were several interesting things in there. The fact that they are getting the sensors for each of those 16 cameras inside the camera, and it's sensor modules for $3 a pop, and they're paying $1 a pop for the lenses.
Oh wow, that's pretty affordable.
It's dadgum cheap. Interestingly enough, though, the gentleman who is one of the owners of the company, or the CTO, the technology officer, talked about the fact that one of the biggest problems they have at the beginning is the fact that you can go over to China and start talking to these sensor manufacturers about, your needs for your camera, and they say, okay, well, how many units do you want? And you say 10,000, and they say, you go talk, you come back and talk to us when you're talking about minimum order sizes of 1 million or more. And he's like, yep. what but we need these things. And so they had to get some of their friends who happen to know the sensor guys to go back and talk to them and say, well, you really need to talk to this company because they may be talking small orders at the beginning, but eventually they're going to be talking big orders. So anyway, long story short, the announcement that they had on Wednesday was that multiple things. They got a $30 million investment from venture capitalists. Now, to me, that implies that their technology is very appealing. We don't know all of the details yet about really what they're planning on, but they're planning on some big things because I don't think venture capitalists would dump $30 million into this company if they didn't think this technology was really feasible. Now, what they have shown us so far in terms of actual photos they're good, but they're not
just mind-blowing.
Yeah. It's like, okay, let's look at this photo of the thundercloud that was taken with the iPhone 6 and say, okay, is this technology really that astounding? What I think what we really want to see now. So let me back up. So they have released some additional photos. They gave a gentleman, Sven, somebody or other from Switzerland or Norway or something, and I apologize because I don't know his name, but he took the camera to the North Pole. Okay, I'm exaggerating again. Camera north a bit to the Arctic and shot some photos, and I included one of them on the article that we did at Planet 5D, and it's good, but it's not like, holy crap, I got to have that camera. And it's the difficulty with these things is that they're comparing themselves to DSLRs, right? They say this will be like having a DSLR in your pocket. And yet they haven't shown like a side-by-side. If you take a 5D Mark III, for example, take a photo and then take the same photo with this camera, then you could actually compare and go, okay, is it really DSLR-like or not? And I am on the waiting list for not only, I mean, I have purchased one, but I'm also on the waiting list for the preview copies that they're going to be sending out before the camera is announced.
Now, a quick question for you. Wasn't this camera, besides the crazy zoom range that was available, supposed to provide some shallow depth of field?
Yes.
Now, wouldn't you think they'd take pictures that would demonstrate that as opposed to like a deep depth of field image of an ocean and some mountains in the background?
Yes. And one of the images, if you end up watching the end of the video, which is an hour long,
that's why I gave up on it. I was just like, I don't have enough time for this.
I know, and I forced myself to watch the whole thing because I was curious. I mean, parts of it are really interesting because they talk about the way.
Paid $200 for that video, Mitch. You better watch it all.
Well, I'm about to pay $800 more when they decide to actually ship the camera, but that's cheaper than the $1,600 retail price. So I could just turn around and sell it on eBay and make money, right? Cha-ching! But part of the video, they talk about how they're folding the different, each one of the images is actually from a different viewpoint, right? Because of the size of the camera, and if you think about it, several of them are about the same distance apart as your pupils, your eyes. And so they theoretically can get some 3D imaging out of this. They talked about the fact that if you use this camera, and they're hoping that because it's an Android-based camera, they will have the ability to do mapping of objects like the Lytro now is doing with their cinema camera that's $150,000 to rent.
Yeah.
You'll be able to do some mapping of distance of objects in a room, for example, if you were shooting video or whatever. So there are some fascinating capabilities for this. You could even do 3D if you wanted to, because of the fact that those things are separated. Certain of the sensors are separated about your eye distance. So there's all kinds of different things that could happen with this. Now, the video they did say is only currently in the first release going to be using one of the sensor arrays. So they're not going to be giving you all the fancy aspects of video, and they, all right, so I'm fascinated by this camera, and I'm really curious, and I'm going to be disappointed if it looks like crap when it finally comes out, right? But so they've expanded the zoom range. So it was originally 35 to 150 was the focal range of the camera, and they dropped it down to 28. So it's now 28 to 150. And again, depending upon which set of, or what your focal length is, they fire off different groups of those lens sensor combinations. So they've got a 28 millimeter focal length set, they've got a 50 millimeter focal length set, and then 150. So that's how and so there's 5 of the wide angle, there's 5 of the middle range, and then there's 6 of the 150. And so if you're shooting at 28, for example, they actually fire the 50s at the same time. So you end up with 10 sensor images, which they combine electronically, and they show you in the video how they're using the 50 millimeter, which has obviously a less distance. God, what's the word I'm looking for?
The depth of field are you looking for?
Because I still haven't gotten to your question about depth of field.
You're talking about the focal distance. So, like the 50 has to be further away from the subject than the 28 in order to accomplish.
Angle is what I'm thinking.
Oh, okay.
Right, because the 50 millimeter has a narrower view angle than a 28. Right. So.
Yes.
Anyway, they're doing it. It's very. If you're really interested in camera technology and the way this thing works, that video is fascinating because they give you a lot of information about how they're folding those images together, and it's going to be cool. Hopefully, if they get it all working. So you asked about depth of field, and so at the very end of the video, they have this. There's one photo which they originally released. It's taken at a skateboard park. And there's the original photo that is full range depth of field like a cell phone camera. And then there's another that has a narrower depth of field. So the background's fuzzy. Yeah. And they fade between the two. And it's perceptible in the sample that they gave. But they also said in the video that they will be able to give you images at an f1.2 depth of field in post-production. Now that's pretty significant depth of field, and they even talk about being able to programmatically change the bokeh, the look and feel of the bokeh, where if you want a circular
so I could get some heart bokeh in the background if I wanted?
Exactly, yes. If you wanted, you could do that, or star shape or whatever. So I mean, the fact that they can theoretically do this is to me very fascinating. And you and I have talked several times about the fact that camera manufacturers are really sort of screwing themselves over. And we've talked about this multiple times by the operating systems that they have within the camera, and the concept of using Android or iOS as the operating system, which would allow all kinds of extensibility that the camera manufacturers never envisioned, is what's another thing that's appealing about this, because it's an Android-based.
You have a platform that's already set up, ready to go, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time you are building a new camera. You can simply use the same ARM processors that they're using in all these cameras today, but use a developed operating system and simply embed your app or your overlay controls or whatever you want to your camera, which, you know, you look at a Digic 5 processor in a Canon camera, while they give it a fancy freaking name, that's an ARM processor with like the basics installed, and then Canon's proprietary control and operating system installed over the top of it. So you're absolutely right, Mitch. You could save a lot from going to Android or iOS as your. Well, I don't think you can get iOS.
No.
Apple would never compromise their operating system for a mere camera.
Yeah, exactly. And in fact, they said in the question and answer that they do anticipate adding a phone feature to this later on, because it's an Android and why not? So it will theoretically become a cell phone / camera in the future.
Now, one more question about this camera before we move on. You mentioned post-processing. Is that something that can be done in the camera, or am I going to have to bring this into some proprietary software in order to do this, similar to like Lightro's whole light field view system that they had on their cameras that have since been debunked? Defunct
yes,
would be the term.
And yes. To answer your question, the answer is yes and yes, which is one of the things I was really looking to get out of that video. Yes, in that you will be able to post-process it in camera. So you will be able to decide if you want to publish, and again, because they're Android, you theoretically can just pop these things out to Instagram or Facebook or wherever. But you can decide at the time you publish it how much depth of field you want, what look and feel you want, whether you want to do a little post zoom or whatever. And there will be a desktop app that you can do post processing as well. And then be able to send it to Lightroom or wherever and do whatever additional processing that isn't included in their software.
So will the processing be similar to like processing a RAW file? Will you have the access to color temperature and some of the other things that are available in RAW, or will this be more of a JPEG type of system where once you're done, you kick out a JPEG and then you can take it to Photoshop or something like that?
The answer to that is that they will be publishing their file formats. So it will be open sourced.
DNG maybe?
DNG will be an option, they said, but they will be having their own format because they have additional data that DNG doesn't have. And so because you will be able to change focus or depth of field, for example, on the fly from the master. So the master will have all of the information. I mean, I likened it to the Lytro or the cinema version of the Lytro that they were talking about being able to, detect individual objects in there and what distance they were. So you will be able to change things on the fly, either on the desktop or in camera. So you will have a RAW, whatever they call it, their own proprietary format, but they're going to publish the format, so it's not going to be proprietary. It will be open source, so anybody will have access to figure out extensibility to it later on. And so theoretically, I would assume that they will be giving that to Adobe and whomever to embed features maybe in Lightroom where you could post-process it directly in Lightroom. I don't know that. They didn't say that, but if it's open source, why wouldn't they allow that?
That sounds really cool.
And because of that, I mean, that's why I'm so excited about it. I think the first generation maybe not so exciting, which is, and by the way, we didn't talk about the fact that two things. Number one, they're not shipping until 2017.
What?
Unspecified date in 2017, which is, I mean, and if you look at like the article on Petapixel, they don't bother to mention that, which kind of surprises me. I mean, so far as I've seen, I'm the only guy that's mentioned the shipping date, which has been pushed out to 2017. And I don't know why none of the articles are talking about it. Yes, that's disappointing, but it also means that they're going to get it right. Hopefully, they're not going to just push something out, because I think if for example they pushed it out and the photos suck or they just look like comparable to a cell phone, they're screwed, right? People will write them off like they did Lytro and go, okay. So they've got to get it right the first time. Now it's not going to be perfect because first generation of anything is they've got to have room to improve, etc. But the other thing that they have done is it was supposed to be 128 gigabytes of memory internal. They've doubled that to 256 at no extra charge. So they've doubled the amount of memory that will be included in the camera at no extra charge.
Well, if you're installing those memory chips in 2017, you're definitely going to save some money on pricing. Because continually memory drops in price. And that actually is a good lead to the last story on the list, Mitch. Great transition there. Let's talk about some memory. If you're familiar with really tiny cards, there are the MicroSD cards that are often shoved in your phone, your GoPros, and other devices that require very little space. Well, there's a new version of that available now from Samsung. They're the first to release the UFS standard cards. These are microSD cards that provide 530 megs per second reads and 170 meg per second writes. They're extremely fast. They have capacities up to 256 gig that will be available, but you'll notice that there's some extra pins on the back of this guy. What do those extra pins do? Well, they don't compete or work with your current micro SD
Yeah.
card slot.
Cool.
So it's a cool concept. Basically, and I've got, if you really want to dig into it, the UHF standard or UFS standard, UHF, no, ultra high frequency. Yes, definitely. No, the UFS standard controller setup, and that's JACAS, I believe, is the group that comes up with that standard. You can dig into it and look, but basically, this is a really awesome micro SD card that has nowhere to go. As far as I know, there aren't any devices yet on the market that are using this interface in their micro SD card slot. So it's awesome, but isn't it the cart before the horse, Mitch?
Yeah. Maybe you've just discovered something, because Canon Rumors published the other day that the 5D Mark IV will have an SD card slot as well as a compact flash CFast.
CFast, yep.
So maybe they're going to put this card in the 5D Mark IV. Let's start that rumor.
Well, I need to dig into the standards on this, but I think it's the same move away from PATA to SATA for the card interface, as well as the ability to be more flexible with the type of memory that's used inside the card. So you may be able to, and again, this is speculation, I have to go research the standard a little bit more, but you may be able to take this, and similar to that sort of Russian nesting doll syndrome you get with other cards, you can maybe put this into a CFast shaped device and then shove the CFast card into your actual device, or similarly your XQ whatever format, plug it into there, and then stick it into the next thing. So maybe that's a possibility with this, and if that's the case, then maybe you get a couple of these when they start dropping in price, and you save it for the next Hero 5 Black Edition when that comes out with a new type of card. I don't know. I mean, the part of me that says it's really cool is having 256 gigs in a space that's the size of a Post-it stamp. But on the other side, when are we going to actually see phones, devices, and things that use this? I want a tablet right now that has 512 gigs worth of space, so I can put my entire life on it and then lose it at the airport and cry for a week. It seems like a great idea. I don't know.
You have to have everything backed up to the cloud.
Actually, one pro tip here, guys, and this is something I did because I was paying $9 a month or $10 a month for 1 terabyte worth of cloud storage space. And it turns out if you write 200 reviews or post pictures of businesses, or you answer questions about the businesses, the number is 200 for Google Ways, you will get free access to 100 or 1 terabyte worth of storage on Google Drive. So I sat down, I hunkered down, I wrote 200 reviews of things that I've been to, covering different countries and a few other things, and now I save $10 a month. That seems like a lot of work. Actually, it was a lot of work.
Hey, I got a virtual assistant. Maybe I can get her to do it.
Yeah, there you go, man. Just start churning out reviews of different restaurants and stuff. It's actually now that I've done it a few times, I actually end up, you'll finish eating in a restaurant, and if you had something really awesome, you just snap a picture of it on the menu and say, if you come to Joe's Emporium, make sure you eat the spectacular burger of Al Content or something like that. Is whatever they name their crazy burger, and then people are like, "Oh yeah, that's great, thanks." So if you're looking for free online storage to back up your 256 gig micro SD card, there you go, guys. That's the secret free way to get it. I didn't know that. Somebody pointed out to me, so hopefully that helps a few of you. Now, I'm about to get out of here, but I got a little bit of time left. Mitch, you have anything else you want to talk about before we go?
Hey, before I forget, and I didn't put it in the show notes, don't forget that tomorrow, Saturday at 9 p.m. is the last day to enter the Roscoe LightPad giveaway, which is an 8x8 panel, by the way.
8x8, okay. That's
what. And now I know. If you go to planetfid.com/giveaway noob, that's giveaway NOOB, you can enter that light panels giveaway, and you only have until tomorrow.
All right, I will add that to the show notes so you guys have access to that. Awesome, Mitch. Well, thanks for getting up really early. Sorry my schedule makes us so...
You realize I'm 2 hours ahead of you. So
I know, you're in way better shape than me. I had to get up at 4 a.m. to get ready for this show, so it's more miserable for me than it is for you, but 7 a.m. is still fairly early. On that note, guys...
The sun is now coming up on your end.
Yeah, I can just see a touch of light back there. It was pitch black, and pretty soon, if we do a show this early, it'll just be black the entire time. Mitch, everybody knows you, but where can they find you?
Planet5D.com. Thank you very much. Thanks, DJ. I'm Planet Mitch. Over and out.
All right. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching, guys. And if you're interested, subscribe or leave some comments in the show notes. I know we had some technical audio difficulties. Thanks, everybody, for sending in some ideas to correct that. We might actually change a little bit and maybe move to Mitch on Skype, and I might be doing the switching by hand just to fix a few of the flubs that are going on with Google Hangouts, because I love you, Google, but sometimes you just abandon products and leave them to rot on the vine, which is very unfortunate. You can find me at DSLRFilmNoob.com. You can find this show on iTunes, SoundCloud, or anywhere audio is distributed. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. And we'll see you next time on another sleepy episode of DSLR Film Noob Podcast. What's that?
I said a graphic.
Cut to the graphic, so you don't have to see me headbanging. Rocking out to my own music. Yeah.
Yoo-hoo!
All right, that's it for the audio listeners. You guys are cut off.
Bye.
And for video viewers, I'm going to go pack myself a small snack for breakfast and get the heck out of Dodge. Mitch.
My shake.
Oh, yeah. Maybe I need to start doing that, having like a pre-made shake to drink. I tried some of those, but I don't know. My friends for Christmas last year bought me they call them space drinks, I think. And it's supposed to be an entire meal in like a 8-ounce cup.
Right.
And apparently you can live on these. You no longer need solid food. You just drink these shakes. And
nice.
I could not stomach them. The taste was not that great. I guess I wasn't hungry, but I felt gross after drinking one of those. I don't know if you're meant to consume all of your calories via a liquid diet, but maybe it's just because I like chewing.
And that's one of the problems they found with those kind of things. If people do have a chewing thing, that if they don't have it, I don't know. Anyway. Okay.
All right. We'll see you next time, guys. Take care.
Bye.